Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Community Now Mental Wellness Week. This week was put together and we did it live last year, and it's unfortunate that we can't, but what Krista did to move this event online and do a whole week of events to bring on great people like Steve and Venetia and Mo and all the other interviews that are going to be happening. It's great. It's about storytelling. It's about listening, but always remembering that asking for help is not a sign of weakness. So I am really excited for Steve Armstrong to be joining me today. Steve, how are you today?
I'm great, Jade. Thanks very much for having me. It's a great honor to be part
Oh,
of this whole mental health and wellness initiative of Community Now and Krista. It's a great idea.
oh, couldn't agree more. And what Community Now, as we said, what they do for their mission is to inspire and create stronger initiative in diverse communities, promoting innovation, storytelling, and engagement to make Alberta stronger. So anytime she asks me to get involved in anything, and I'm sure you'll probably vouch for that, like, oh man, like
Yeah,
I can't preach enough about what she does.
no, absolutely. And she's pretty compelling, pretty hard person to say no to at the best of times. And if it's a worthwhile cause, it's even harder.
Oh, isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth? So what I'm going to do is we're going to have you share your knowledge today. So I'll do a brief introduction here, and then we'll get after it. So
Perfect.
Steve is a Calgary-based speaker, educator, and consultant expert, developing the followers into leaders and building dedicated, loyal, and remarkable teams. Through the lessons learned from 35 years as a leader, soldier, and humanitarian, Steve has honed his insights and leadership skills. His unique ability to inspire and teach others to lead is magnificent. He is one of the only handful of people in Canada who has planned, managed relief and recovery responses, and maintained a complex business community function for the following. And we'll get into some of the following down the road here, but I mean, when you work with the Red Cross. But the one thing I forgot to mention is that you are an author and you can't lead from behind. And you gave me the book, and there it is. I know you say it's probably nowhere to be found, but here it's found.
Well, my mom is super proud of it. She says it's the best book I ever wrote.
I'm not smart enough to write a book, so I'm not even going to pretend unless someone ghostwrites it for me, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, one thing that we talk about. I mean, I'm sure I missed out a little bit, and I would like to expand on a little bit of your humanitarian work and how that impacted you to become a coach and share your stories with people of the world.
Yeah. Well, it goes back a bit before, probably my time, mostly as a soldier. We all have leaders in our lives that influence us, but I would say mostly my experience in the Canadian Army, joined as a young kid, really a kid at 17.
Yeah.
Didn't know anything. Was proving that I didn't know anything in high school, and was suggested that if I wasn't going to do anything, I shouldn't be doing it there. And they kind of scooched me out the door down to sign up. And I found I really thrived in the military. And then again later in life with Red Cross. And as an older guy now, I'm not brand new anymore. I look back and it was the things that a sense of belonging, uh, having a place like old school language like honor and respect and belonging, and the thing that the military regimental system sort of builds in you is you can let yourself down, but you will never let your buddies down and the regiment down. So they built this whole thing up around where you belong. And then in humanitarian work, again, I found Red Cross to be much similar, different but similar. And the privilege I had when I was in both organizations, for the most part, I had great bosses. Bosses that just told me, people always think the military is strict and rigid, and they say regimented. And my explanation is that regimental is quite different than regimented. And I was always given a lot of freedom to do my job. I was told what people wanted done, what I wasn't allowed to do, and sent on my way. And I thrived in that environment. I developed into, well, I think I became an excellent leader, an excellent judge of human beings and what motivates them and what's going on with them, and the empathy as a leader to be able to get the most out of them when we really needed it, when things were really tough and really hard.
Oh, I mean, I can't even imagine. I'm probably more the opposite of, I don't know how I got where I am today because I probably didn't listen and I didn't follow the rules. So I think we took two different paths.
It's a path too. So,
It's a,
my guidance counselor was not helpful, but
yeah.
she told me I wasn't going to amount to anything, and I managed to do that somehow or other. So every once in a while, I say she probably crap her pants if she ever saw where I ended up. But after some of that work in high school, I did. And to be fair to her, I was a crappy student. I did not do well there.
Oh goodness. Well, I know you, like you said, it's regimented, and everybody thinks about the military as, the A, B, C, D. I mean, here you go, follow this, do this. And I know one thing we before we started recording this and we decided what we were going to talk about, and I love the fact that you and I were on almost the same page, and talking about listening, and obviously the importance of listening in the military, to following the rules, following the things, learning from the whether it be the mistakes or the experiences of other people. How has listening evolved from you, how basically almost having to where you are today?
Well, I think listening is the most undeveloped competency and skill in almost everybody, let alone as in the military and leaders. There's different aspects to it. I would say, as a leader, first off, you have to be able to listen and take the time to understand what your boss is wanting, because sometimes they're not 100% clear. They'll just what's clear in their mind and what comes out of their mouth are maybe two different things, right? So you need to be able to listen and delve into what they're asking for. But as a person, like I have my wife, a terrific human being, a lot better person than I. She gets mad at me because when we go out at a big function and there's stuff going on and people ask questions but don't really listen or step on the end of your response, I just sit back. I cross my arms and sit back and disengage. And that's not exactly a most admiring trait a human being ever had. But because I think that if you're not going to listen to me, I'm not going to bother talking. I'm not going to waste my energy engaging in this conversation. So there's, a social aspect, a family aspect. I come from a fairly big family where we're coming up on Christmas, and there would be nothing to have 30 or 40 people at a dinner table around, and you think nobody's listening. Everybody's talking. Nobody's hearing what's going on, and that's that's fine in that setting, but it's also quite disrespectful because somebody might have something important to say. And if you jump on somebody's sentence or don't let them finish their thought or don't give them space to talk, certainly in the context of mental health, I think they'll just stop talking to you. Just like I do at a table with full of people or friends and family or strangers. And if I think they don't want to listen, I stop talking. And that is I would say I don't know if it's a character flaw, it's probably too strong. It's not a redeeming feature, because then at a certain point you stop asking, stop participating, stop looking for help. And I think I've bumped into that several times in my life, where it's pertinent to the conversation around mental health and wellness. I just stopped talking to people and so either crawled into a bottle of rye or just crawled into myself and hid there for a while until I came back out.
No, I agree, and I think listening is something that we work on our entire lives. I mean, am I a good listener all the time? Absolutely not. Do I jump on people's sentences? Probably, maybe more when I'm in that bottle of rye. But it's it's but it's something that I've really learned over the later years, or the last probably 20 years of my life, the importance of listening, and how it affects people, and especially why I am so involved in the mental wellness side of things. And and when my friends took their own lives, and this is really why, I mean, I'm talking really good friends, and maybe I didn't listen to them, maybe I missed something, maybe, like, oh, I think about it every single day of my life, that did I miss something, did I not listen to him, did I don't know, and I'll never know. And it's something that is I really try and be pertinent on and make sure that I listen. I let the person finish. I take in what they're saying before I respond, and it's become really important to me.
Yeah. Well, I think too, we have this unbelievable initiative called Bell Let's Talk, in in the new year it pops up, and it really raises this thing up that people should be able to talk about what's going on. But if they, and it's not that somebody maybe purposely isn't listening, but if you're not careful to pick up the cues, or if that person isn't articulate about what's going on, and I'm bad at it, so I'm the first one to say. So one of my stories was I was starting to struggle quite a bit, and uh, my career as a soldier and a humanitarian, I've seen lots of things that no human being should ever see, but I managed to keep it under control. And then I was having a bit of trouble at work in my role as my last work job with Red Cross. I was getting tired, we had a lot going on. It was at that time it was Slave Lake, and there was a couple of big disasters, and we were going through this big organizational change, which I wasn't super comfortable with as a human being, as a leader. And I was working on a master's degree, and it was like a lot happening, and I could just feel myself getting wore down. And I was heading up to Red Deer for a meeting with a potential corporate sponsor, and just in front of me there was an accident. So this big gigantic, you know huge silver Chevy truck blew through a red stop sign across the highway to the main highway through central Alberta, and T-boned this little car that flipped it end for end for end for end down the road. I don't know how many times that car flipped. The truck flipped on its side, and I was like right behind this little car, and I stopped, pull over, and when I got to the car, I knew right away, if you've never seen somebody dead, there's no mistaking it when you see dead people. The grandmother was dead. The mom, a young lady, probably a mom, was all beat to rat shit, and she didn't have much time left. You could just tell, unless she got help like right away. Even then, it would have been close. But the worst of it was, in the backseat of this car was a small toddler in a car seat. And we got the baby out, and the worst thing, well, not the worst thing but when we got her out, the baby was still and not moving in the car seat until we got her out, and then she started to cry, which was like the most relief I felt in a long, long time, that this little one was okay.
Yeah.
Seemed okay at any rate. And the mom passed away in the car. The grandmother was already, I assume it was a grandmother, mom, and a baby. And anyways, we got cleaned up, and the ambulance came, and the fire department, police came and took statements, and then I went on my way. But I was this thing started eating at me a little bit and playing in my arm. And I mentioned it in a way that, like, if I was talking to you, Jade, I would have said, geez, that accident, I bumped into that accident. That bothered me a little bit. And, your natural instinct is to say, well, of course it would, right?
Yeah.
It was a trauma and a tragedy. But you wouldn't necessarily go a little bit deeper. But if people that might have known me better might have asked, I'm not one to say those things out loud. Like, things might bother me, but I managed to deal with it and compartmentalize it in a way that's healthy. So how do we pick up those little twigs, like you said, with your friends? Like, and it shouldn't be anything you should be carrying around as a responsibility, I don't think. But there are times when somebody says something that's just maybe a little bit out of character for them. What's the open-ended question, or the time you could possibly give to make sure that you can delve into that a little bit? And that's the listening part. Like, my boss, when I raised it at a lunchroom table, just sort of looked at me.
Yeah.
And I'm not one to complain. Like, I could have a bone still. Like, I grew up in a home and in a profession as a soldier that you weren't sick unless there was a bone sticking right out of you. Like, this going to see a counselor or a chaplain or something around mental health was the kiss of death for your career in those days. So I don't talk about stuff like that.
Yeah.
And when I actually brought it forward to my boss and she didn't pick up on it, I will say she chose not to listen. Maybe she didn't know what to say, but that's not really the issue. Then I started clamming up even more. And my behavior became not as professional probably as it should have been. But the writing was sort of on the wall when that happened. As soon as I got shut down there that time, she chose not to listen for whatever reasons, and I withdrew further and further away from that and became the odd person out on a team.
Yeah, I mean that's a horrific story for anybody to go to, and especially if you have, in a work spot where you have enough stresses as it is. Never mind having that weighing on your mind, and no one there to support you, and I mean, yeah, I don't know what was going through her mind or whatever it may be, but I mean that's something that we learn. I've learned anyway. Even as a family, we've gone through this recently, and I again didn't pick up on the signs of my wife being coming to some challenges through mental illness, and it's hard. Like it is very hard. It's hard to talk about. It's hard to discuss. It's so easy to internalize it. And as you said before, I mean, maybe people do turn to other things, whether it be drugs or alcohol or and I know I found that I had a really good support network, and sometimes I know that, I mean, this is me, and I know in my friends and things along those lines, a lot of times when I'm saying, listen, when I phone them, I'm saying, I just need you to listen to me for the next 5 minutes. I don't want to hear you talk. Just listen. And I asked them for that. And I mean, we've been friends since we've been 5 years old, and I have a network that I can really reach out on. And it's really helped me through this last 7 or 8 months of our lives, and that I have somebody to rely on, and that will listen to me. And even during COVID here, businesses and that are phoning me. I just sit there and listen. And some people have a hard time not talking about themselves, and as I said, it is very hard to become a good listener, and it is so important in that first step when someone does reach out to you, as you did, or as other people have, and to me, or me to my friends. It takes a lot to be a good listener.
Well, for sure. And some of the things we can do, and even just as a boss, when you're having a conversation with somebody, is to wait for the period at the end of that person's sentence or the question mark. And then, what I've learned to do, it's hard work for me too, because, often I think I know what the right answer is and the right thing to say is, but the right thing to do is just when somebody finishes talking, just buy yourself some time, pause for 3 seconds and think about what you're going to say, and then say it out loud. And that does a couple of things. I think for the person who's talking to you, if you jump right in at the end of their sentence, then it's almost you send a message that you haven't really taken time to think about what they said. And so that's generally bad. They start shutting down because they said, well, that was useless, talking about this. And then the other thing is, just like border guards do, you and I and lots of people fly back and forth, they're used to, and hopefully again someday soon. But what does a border guard do? He'll ask you a question, you'll give an answer, and then they go quiet and pause. And 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 it seems like forever that, and just like in physics, nature abhors a vacuum, and and they're counting on you starting to talk about all of the sinning you did in Vegas. And all of the contraband you got hidden in the bottom of your suitcase.
Yeah.
But that's the trick that they use. And I think when we're talking to people, I think buying silence, by taking time to be quiet and listening to what's happening, it gives you a chance to think about what was said. It gives the person the opportunity to think that you actually cared about what they said. And the second part is, at a certain point, they'll start talking again. And that second level conversation, I think, is much deeper and usually much richer than the shallow conversation you have at the beginning. Because if I asked you, we met for coffee at one of the breakfasts, and I said, "How you doing, Jade?" What's your response? Fine, good,
Yeah.
whatever. It's almost a flip conversation. But we know as spouses and partners and in relationship that if your wife says she's fine, that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So it's like, how do you peel that back a little bit and figure out what's going on?
And that's so true. And I've even learned to take it one step farther when it comes to, when I've had many of these discussions, and it's because I've put myself out there and saying,
Yeah.
please call. It doesn't matter who you are, what you do. I'm here. I'm here to listen. Whether it be through COVID or even before COVID, it's something that it's done. And our tendency as humans is, as I said it before, talk about ourselves or tell a story that relates to us. And it's good if you and I are having a solid conversation here, and that's great. But when it's kind of on the other end and somebody is looking for you to be that listener for them, a lot of times my next question to them is, what would you like from me? And how can I help you? And that sometimes is the only things I say in the whole conversation. And it's that sense of security that you want to give them, because you know what, it's not about me at this point. It's not about what I have done or my experience, even though it might be the same. I could have gone through the same thing as the person that I'm talking to, but it doesn't really matter at that point. And as you said, that pause and have them open up and have them talk more. And that is the first step. And I remember when Venetia was on my Telling It Like It Is, and she said the hardest thing for a person, that first step to recovery is actually reaching out and realizing you're not alone. And if then that's the last point where you want to sit there and start talking about yourself and just saying, hey, I'm here for you. What do I need? And I found that to be so relieving to a lot of the people that I talk with.
Yeah. Well, as a leader of a team, I firmly believe that at least half of your time should be not just emailing people, but talking to people. Now with Zoom, it's a lot easier, I think. But the first and best choice is to be in the room with them, and the second is by Zoom, and the third is by phone. And if like we've all led people, and eventually something bad's going to happen in a family, as a death or whatever it might be. Like the number of funerals and the number of things I've gone to because it was the right thing to do and allowed someone to talk to me and cry and get it off their chest is more than I care to think about, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
But it was the right thing to do. And part of that is just being there. Like as one of a guy I used to work for, he used to always say, like, if you phone, he said, he had an expression saying, bring the casserole. And what he meant by that was show up at somebody's door and bring the casserole and ask them how they're doing. Because if you email them or phone them and ask them how they're doing, you're going to get a flip short answer. But if you show up and you're looking in somebody's eyes and you say, how are you doing? You will get a completely different answer. And if you use some of the things we've talked about, is by allowing silence to occupy some positive space and allow that person to open up, it's a completely different conversation.
No, absolutely couldn't. And that's one of the, I don't want to say the hidden reason that Founders Coffee was started. I mean, it's a good place. It was a place to network, but more importantly, it was for like-minded people, entrepreneurs, small businesses that maybe don't get out there and maybe can't connect personally in that face-to-face. Because I am a very strong advocate of face-to-face, and I try to do it as much as possible. And in the last couple of weeks here, a lot of things have moved back to Zoom. But in January, it'll be back to face-to-face. And there have been many conversations that have come out of Founders Coffee that people have reached out and said, hey, do you mind if we go for another coffee and chat and whatever it may be. And that's what they're here for. And we do have such a strong ecosystem here, especially in that entrepreneurial world and that small business world, where the support is here. People will help, people will listen, people will pass on references or whatever you need.
Yeah.
We have that in Alberta, and it's just a matter of making sure that the people that need the help are aware of it.
Yeah. Well, I think in this time with COVID and people isolating for all sorts of reasons, personal choice or government decision or whatever it might be,
Yeah.
you know, this is the time not to wait for someone to ask for help. This
Yes.
is exactly the time when somebody uh, merits, deserves at least a phone call. And it's been a bit of a project for me because I'm just, I'm impacted just like everybody else. Although I think I'm in a good place these days. But to make a phone call to people, to reach out, just to say, hey, we haven't talked for a while. What's going on and how you doing? And and I would think too, that when you're working with people, seeing them all the time, another thought just crossed my mind, Jade. I hope you don't mind, but
Oh no.
is that if I think back about times when I was in trouble, when I say trouble, like I was having mental health or wellness issues, or people around me where there was something that happened that was abnormal. They responded differently to something that you would normally expect them to respond well. And when people act out, especially at work, they are transferring where they don't have any control to where they have control. Or the vice versa at home. If you went home and acted out and snapped at the kids or the dog or your wife, you're taking what's happening at work, you're bringing it home to where you have more control, right? So I think as friends and as leaders and as just human beings, when we see somebody acting a little bit out of character, I think it's high time that we pay attention to that. Now, maybe I'm old school, but I don't think we have to accept 100% responsibility for everybody all the time. But I think we do have a responsibility to look for that twig, that signal that they're sending, because I tend to think that that's a flare, a signal flare, right?
Yeah.
It might not go very high and that might not burn very bright, but it's a little bit of a flare. And I think we need to step in there a little bit. But at some point too, the person has some responsibility in all of this to work with us or you or me or a mental health worker or whatever it is to get through this. Because if we accept full responsibility for everybody's emotional and psychological decisions, it's a hell of a burden for us to carry around, like you mentioned too, with your friends from other experience. It's not fair.
No. No, and it's most people don't reach out to a professional right away. They reach out to somebody close to them and or an acquaintance, wherever it may be, at the squash club, at the
Yeah.
gym, or at a coffee, or at a networking event, whatever. And I agree with you. That flare doesn't need to be very high, but just one person needs to see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I agree. And then I mean, even, I think about this event, right? And, Krista was thinking about canceling it because it was, it's not going to have the same impact as it did last year when it was live and in the theater and, hundreds of people are there. But I was like, no, we can't cancel it. It's too important. Yes. You know what? We're going to have a little hybrid and of, the pre-recorded something, and some will be live, and Debbie's happiness challenge. And I said, I think more than ever, people need this right now, and people like yourself sharing your stories it's priceless, and thank you
Yeah.
for it.
Well, I again, like people can't necessarily see I'm bigger than what I used to be, but I'm a big guy. I'm a loud guy and I take up a lot of space. And some people think I got too much of a big personality. But especially if you are, look like that, you look strong. We all know guys like you're an athlete. We all know physically active, big, fit people. And and I know I was a sergeant major, and then I was a senior director at Red Cross, and I did all that stuff. And people think, well, he's okay. But they're often the people we got to keep an eye on. You guys like us are the ones other people sometimes have to keep an eye on, because we just assume that, oh, the sergeant major, he's friggin' fit as a fiddle and he's strong and he's a leader and he's a sergeant major. But and then we take on this burden of the mantle of the position or the person that people start to think we are. So I think if this next week does one thing, is to get people to look for those little flares, reach out a little more. if someone doesn't respond the way you think they should, take the time to find someone else to shoot off another flare, and try to find some help, and look for someone that can listen to you. Because if, even if the best intent, they're well intended and they have the best intention, if they're not listening, they're not going to be able to help you out. So don't stop at the first person that shuts you down in a conversation or appears not to be listening. Find that person, take the next step.
I think that's a perfect advice to end it on, right? I mean, it's we're here for you, and if then this week there are probably, I don't know how many speakers, but probably there's going to be 15 or so people involved, and any single one of these 15, whether you know them or not, will take your call, answer your email, your text message, your LinkedIn DM, whatever you want to do, and make sure that they're there for you, and even if it's the first step. And you'll hear Venetia's story, and that, I mean, I don't think there was a story out there that could get any, she's one of the worst that you hear, right? And how she's overcome to get to where she is today, and watched what her kids went through. And I highly recommend that if you listen to one story, you listen to what she had to overcome to get to where she is today, to help the people that she's helping. It's inspiring, and that's what this week is about. And I'm so happy that Community Now and Krista and people like yourself and Connie and everybody is involved in making sure that we are stronger together. So thank you again, Steve.
Oh my gosh, Jade, it's a great pleasure. And like I say, don't think that you're weak. Think that you're not well.
Exactly. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, I hope everybody enjoys the rest of this week. I believe this is a Tuesday morning. It should be about 10 a.m. after this one ends. So there's a lot more great stuff coming, especially on Friday. We're going to have an open Zoom call around 2 p.m. So please, come in there. The link will be in the Community Now magazine, on the Facebook page, on the website, where you can log on to it and join the Zoom call. And if that's where your first reach out session is, hey, we're going to be a lot of people there to help you. So again, thanks, Steve. And I hope everybody has a great week, and we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.